Well, I had my ambition in life had previously been that I was going to go to Stanford, and I was going to get a PhD in chemistry, and I was going to be a college teacher, hopefully. That was kind of my goal, but regardless of anything else, the war and the whole thing. That's what I want. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be Dr. Leonard teaching in Stanford.
Okay.
High aspirations.
Tell me about your military friendships. Did you make many while you were in service?
Yes.
Okay.
I have two very, very close friends, both deceased now, that were very close friends.
Okay. Do you stay in contact with friends and family during your time in service? And if so, how?
How do you have any what?
Did you stay in contact with the friends and family members during your time in service?
Oh, yes. I wrote my mother every day today.
Do you have any specific memories about your service in, say, your time in Alaska? Anything specific that comes to mind?
Oh, yeah, I had some really kind of very almost things that were stories. I had some interesting experiences in Alaska. I mean, I was in charge of a cryptography unit at. I'd been assigned to this group, which was working on the Russian codes and things. I did a lot of work for people who were working on Russian codes, but I didn't know any Russian myself. It was a kind of an odd situation, but anyway, I was assigned to the University of Alaska at one point, and I was not appointed. It was classified as a top secret project, and I worked out at the University of Alaska. Well, there was a separate little group out that was attached to the University of Alaska, and I worked separately that I was working with, and well, anyway, we were working on the Russian weather code, and these guys worked they worked about 24 hours. It was a special group, and they worked about 24 hours a day. You know, they didn't have a regular schedule or anything. What they did, they just worked around the clock. And there was a general came to inspect our group, and he was he actually was a civilian who had been inducted from World War I or something, who really thought, you know, I'm a general, I really, what I say goes. And anyway, he came and found a lot of these guys in bed in the middle of the day. And he, how did it happen? He was going to come in and see why were these guys working on this. Well, it was a top secret project, and I told him I was a first lieutenant at the time, and I said, "Oh, sir, I'm sorry, but you can't go in there. It's not permitted without special permission." And he threatened to court-martial me, you know, on the spot, and it, it was a kind of an interesting experience. But I got mixed up in that. What am I leading to? Well, anyway, I wouldn't let this general into our office where we were decoding this Russian weather code, because it was supposed to be, at the top, we weren't supposed to be doing that. I think the Russians probably knew about it, but anyway, we were supposed to be doing it. And anyway, he threatened to court-martial you on the spot, and I said, "Well, I'm sorry, sir, I can't let you in. You just..." Well, anyway, it all cleared up, but I got involved in that situation, you know, really crazy, and all these things were all classified, you know, top secret. They were interviewing my parents at home and everything else under the sun. And of course, I knew this was all going on, and I didn't know what to do because I was kind of caught between two powers. Well, finally got all straightened out, but I did have that experience of dealing, you know, a first lieutenant, you know, telling a general what to do is not part of the project. And of course, he was very, very aware of, he actually was a civilian who had come from, I guess, World War I or sometime, you know, and thought that he could do whatever he wanted to. And normally, under normal circumstances, they can, but, you know, a lowly lieutenant doesn't tell a general very often what to do if you could get the situation. I guess maybe if I had been pretty determined, that I might have gotten this trouble. Well, I escaped from that without any problem.
Okay. So what was it like working with cryptographers?
What?
What was it like working with cryptographers? They seem to have an interesting time schedule.
Well, the thing is, I think maybe we even had a PhD working in the group. It was a group that was just completely separate. There had been a man come from Washington, D.C. who had brought the group out from Washington, set the group up, stayed for about 4 days, then went back to Washington and left me in charge of it. And I knew absolutely nothing about cryptography. But basically, people who are doing that sort of work just work as a kind of open group. They sleep when they feel like it, and they do whatever they want to do. They're independent. Of course, when this general came and found these people all in bed in the middle of the day, it was really a big problem. So I've had a lot of problems like this, and in the middle of all this, you know, during the war, the Air Force was separated from the Army, and that caused another conflict, you know, between agencies and everything. I think I've gone through every sort of conflict you could stand, but that was one of the things that happened to me.
Okay.
But those are just some of the things that my wartime experience had nothing to do with battles. You know?
Okay, you didn't see like a conflict at all.
Huh?
You didn't see any battles at all.
No, well, we actually were bombing the northern Japanese islands, and I sometimes assisted on forecasts because I was trained as a meteorologist too, on top of everything else.
And I'm assuming that being based in Alaska, the conditions were pretty bad. I mean, obviously cold.
Well, actually not, because Alaska was, at the time I was there, was a permanent base. I mean, it was a developed, what's the main big town in Alaska?
Anchorage?
No, not Anchorage. What's the other big town?
Fairbanks?
Well, anyway, the air base was connected together through tunnels under the snow. I mean, you lived in developed, it was a developed base in the midst. It had been established specifically to protect Alaska, in case there were a war. So living in Alaska was, in my case, I lived in a Quonset hut part-time and not much. And just like everything else, I was, at that time I was an officer, and you usually get, if there's anything good, you get it.
Okay.
I used to give my liquor donation to the enlisted men that were in that group.
Were you awarded any medals or citations?
No, when you serve in an area like that, they pass out some just regular. I have 2 or 3, but they really don't mean anything, You were there and in that particular thing.
Okay.
So for all practical purposes, no, I don't have any
Okay.
citations for that.
Okay. Do you recall the day your service ended? What year was that?
Oh dear. Well, I came back to the war ended. Actually what happened was I became the base weather officer at Yakutat, Alaska. I became more like just an ordinary officer who ran an air base.
Okay.
It was more of it was kind of a administrative job. I had a group of about 14 or 15 men who ran this air base. It was just an operational sort of thing. The war was over, and I was taking out all the equipment to Cal Vivi, and I sat down there at Yakutat for quite a little while. It was kind of interesting. It was an interesting job, actually.
Where were you when the war came to an end?
Well, the war had ended then. That's the reason why they closed down all the air bases that were involved with the war.
Okay.
For all practical purposes, the war was over as far as I guess it was still ending in Europe, but it was, for all practical purposes, it was over.
Okay. Can you describe the readjustment to civilian life?
Well, I got out and we had a lot of classes. I went on I took a 6-week course at Fresno State, and I went on a field trip that lasted 6 weeks during the summer. I had a wonderful time doing that. I became that. And then when I came back in the fall, I taught school for a year.
What was your reception like when you came home, at home, once you came back from Alaska?
Oh, I don't know. I don't think people pay very much attention to me, because I'd never been involved in a battle, though a good friend of mine had been killed as a pilot. But aside from that, as I say, I taught school for a year, and that taught me I didn't think I wanted to be a teacher in public schools.
All right, then. Now, did you continue your education after your time in service, or did you go back to school?
Well, let's see. As a wretched program, let's see, what did I do? Well, I do have a master's degree that I got at some point along. I'm not sure exactly how it from Caltech, but I did not really go into a formal program,
Okay.
as my education, even though I had intended to, but my experience teaching public school made me to decide not to work for a PhD. I had thought I would work for a PhD at Stanford, was what I really had in mind, but I thought, I'm not very good at foreign languages, and I wondered, gee, can I master 2 foreign languages? So I just dropped that idea.
Okay. So what did you do after that, I guess after the teaching?
I worked for a geophysical clue for quite a little while one summer, because I had the scientific background for it. I really didn't need that high, but I did. I worked for that.
Okay. And after that, was there something else you did afterwards, after that?
Well, let's see what actually happened. I worked with that geophysical crew for a while, and then I decided I was going to get married. I had a girlfriend for a long time that we had, and let's see, how did that happen? What I did, I came back to Hanford, and my wife had not finished her degree. So she I had known a woman when I grew up who had not finished her degree because she wanted to get married. Well, it was a mistake, but so I insisted that my future wife go back to school and finish her degree. And so she went back to University of Missouri, and she got her finished her bachelor's degree. And while she was there, I worked for an oil company as a
Beacon Oil?
yeah. I can't remember exactly what I did for him, but it was, I knew I wasn't going to stay there, but anyway, she did finish her degree, and we were married.
Okay.
And we've been married ever since.
Because I've got here that you were vice president of Beacon Oil?
Yes, I was vice president of Beacon Oil Company when Beacon Oil Company went out of business, and I retired as the vice president of Beacon Oil.
Okay. So how has your military service affected your life, and what life lessons or observations did you gather from your time in service?
Well, the military service was very good for me. I was a kind of a shy, retiring sort of kid. I was the only child, and my sister was 18 years older than I was. It was a kind of a funny, the military service that I had really, I would never have been the manager of a company if I hadn't had that military service. It really made me grow up.
Okay. How have these experiences impacted your outlook on military service and war in general?
Well, I realized that I would never be a permanent member of the military, I don't think, but I realize it's necessary. See, did I tell you that I graduated from high school with Admiral Zumwalt?
Oh, no.
Does that impress you?
Yeah. The Admiral Zumwalt.
Huh?
The Admiral Zumwalt.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that people can't believe it, that's possible, that I did. And he's been a personal friend, you know, during my life.
Okay. You stayed in touch with the Admiral after the war?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I've had a very interesting life. People are always very surprised at that. In fact, I was in the first grade with him.
Oh, okay.
And not so long ago, I had a picture of our first grade class, and for some reason, I had one, and I made a copy of it and sent him the copy of his first grade class when he became so you know, so well-known and everything.
Yeah.
I think it was published in a number of things.
Okay. Future generations will see this interview. What would you like them to know?
Just about the war in general?
Yeah, or just anything that comes to mind.
Well, in future general, people want to know about this period. Well, you know, I don't know. I only have 2 granddaughters. I don't have any grandsons. And my son died of an illness, so I really don't know, because I don't think they'll be interested in it. It'll just be they had really no connection with it in any way. It didn't affect them in any way whatsoever.
Okay. So to sum up, is there anything else that you would like to add to this interview?
About the area completely?
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't really conducted too much, because, see, my father was about 40 when I was born, and so he was never drafted or anything. I was in no way connected with the war. The war didn't really mean a thing to me. I mean, I was never, well, it just didn't. I mean, I just didn't have any connection. It didn't make any difference to me in any way. For all practical purposes, and all the work that I did as an officer was always in some sort of research or supervising somebody else doing something special. I mean, I was kind of just an attachment to the war effort. It didn't influence me very much at all.
Okay. Okay, Jim. Well, thank you for taking the time for this interview, and I'd like to thank you for your service to your country.
Well, I did what I told to do, I guess. I don't think I ever volunteered for anything.
Well, still you serve, so thank you again, Jim.
Okay.
Okay, that about wraps it up. Okay, all right, well, good job, Jim.
Okay.
I
I don't know if we gave you any new information.
No, we got through it. Let me make sure. Yep, okay.
I just want to say that Admiral Zumwalt was my admiral when I went in.
What is that?
Admiral Zumwalt, I went in when he was admiral.
Sonny was in the Navy.
I was in the Navy.
He was the admiral?
He was the admiral, and he wanted more women. He recruited women.
Yeah, I know that he got a lot of criticism.
He did get a lot of criticism.
Oh, yeah.
He gave us co-ed boot camp, co-ed barracks.
Oh, thank you.
He was quite the man.
Well, that's amazing.
Yes.
Well, you know, he,
Is that way I can
his mother and father both were
And thank you for
doctors.
bringing Jim in.
Ah.
So, okay, I'll
And
take
he
four.
was, she was very, very smart. And he was the, what they call it, the top man in my high school graduate.
Oh, wow.
You know, and, but he was always very, friendly to me, but he did have he was the only person in my class that had a set of Britannica. I mean, he had all the things that the rich boy had. So I was always sort of jealous of it.
He was the most liberal admiral ever in the Navy.
Really?
Very liberal. We loved him. We loved him, yeah.
Well, we've always been, we're not really close friends because my family is just working class. And
Well, I've never met him, but he made a big impact on my life.
Did he?
Yeah. Yes.
Well, that's great because, as I say, my family was just strictly working class, and both his parents were doctors. You know, you can imagine growing up in a small town, the difference between the thing. But I always like to mention that because you know, he lost one of his sons, you know, in the Vietnam War.
I did not know that, no.
And it was kind of a sad thing. And growing up in a town, are you from California?
I'm from Lemoore.
Oh, you're from, well, you know about Tulare and everything, so you know what it's like. And as I say, I was born in Tulare. So.
I was with a Navy, my father was in the Navy.
Uh-huh.
We were the first people to be stationed in Lemoore.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They just opened the base, yeah.
Yeah. So, I'm just a California boy, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
I lived in Alaska for quite a while.
Was it Adak, Alaska? Was that the place you were?
I was stationed at Adak.
Adak, yeah.
Adak for a while. Part of the time I was at in Anchorage. That's where the kind of headquarters were. I worked in the cartography group where we did the mapping and a lot of things like that. I never actually was in any battle.
No, I wasn't either,
Yeah.
no.
I was just support staff.
Yep, but that's important too. We want that, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's amazing how many people I meet. But you never actually worked under Bud Zumwalt.
Well, he was the admiral
Oh, yeah.
when I went in. No, I was not stationed anywhere near. I was a dental tech. I cleaned teeth. I was a dental.
Well,
Yeah.
that's very necessary.
Yes, it was. Thank you. But they didn't let women do a lot when I went in.
Yeah.
Yeah, women were very, very limited.
So